3. The transits really speak to me in the whole sign house. And there's all kinds of other houses systems you can use, and like there's a lot of other specific techniques that work better with more degree-based house-based systems. But I'm using whole sign in this, and it's one of the ones. It goes all the way back to the beginning of recorded astrology, so it's a very valid house system to use, even though there's drama about it in the astrology community. But that's a side note. So, back to these eclipses. So this last one is really interesting to me, this last Scorpio one, because I found out that it's actually on her MC. It just happened in Scorpio. This MC is usually in the 10th house, but it can be either in the 11th or the 9th. And that has to do with it's supposed the height. It's like the height of the sun. It's called the in Italian, Latin, blah. It's the medium coeli, which means the middle of the sky, which is where the sun is at high noon, kind of in terms of that. That's where how the house systems are sort of derived based on where the sun is, kind of. It's the whole thing. So if it's on her MC, then in general, the 10th house has to do with reputation, public standing, but the MC also has to do that. It's the point at where you're most visible. So sometimes if it goes in the 11th, then it's you're most visible in terms of, her. I feel like her, career has been so much about, relating to her fans and public perception and management of the PR narratives and, using her sort of, friend, in a way, creating these very, very strong parasocial bonds through her diaristic songwriting and her sort of documentation of the female experience. And that's a big part of her life, but it's also extremely divisive. And one of the reasons why I like the Capricorn chart for her is because Mars is in the 11th house, which is the house of friends and life goals and life dreams and plans and communities you associate with. And I think that's interesting that she has this, Mars tends to be this more malefic planet, this planet that gives you more challenges, especially she has a day chart because the sun is above the horizon, so Mars is going to be the one that gives her more problems rather than Saturn, which is the other malefic. And Mars in general in the 11th house has to do a lot with sort of feelings of loneliness, isolation, she's a mastermind. No one wanted to play with me when I was a little kid. She talks a lot about, having social struggles in school and the best day with her mother, and she never felt like she fit in at school except for with Abigail and all of that, and her whole sort of obsession with the whole squad thing in 1989, and also Snakegate and things like that show that she's incredibly divisive in terms of her response to people. And Mars really makes you sort of cut people off very quickly in the 11th house, and also have, especially when it's near Pluto. I mean, it's not too super close to Pluto, it's 10 degrees, but that's gonna, co-presence is gonna be felt, and so there's gonna be intense sort of baggage around friends, and, sort of baggage around wanting to also achieve your life dreams and get this power, but also having these issues with people around that, and all of that kind of thing, which she definitely has with Kanye and with, Scooter and all of that drama that she's had, with these ups and downs of her PR narrative and people hating her. And I thought it was interesting, given this recent one, that she's having all of this sort of backlash on the internet, at least about the Maddie Healy scenario. And he seems to, he gives me a Scorpio vibe. I hardly know anything about him that much, but I get that kind of from him. And I get that from Maddie Healy, this sort of kind of, I heard that he's, has some past drug addiction issues, which sometimes can be associated with Scorpio. It's kind of those deep, dark, hidden things that are a little bit sort of sometimes toxic, or sort of, sort of taboo kind of things, or, violent things, or sort of masculine, or forbidden, rock and roll, underground, sordid, corrupt, secretive kind of things. So having that eclipse there on her MC is part of why I think a lot of people are kind of grossed out by the idea either of her being with him, and also given there's all this sort of talk about him having done a Nazi salute, whether ironically or not, pretty gross. And also his, misogyny and weird rock and roll stuff of like eating meat, I guess. I don't know. So in general, people think either, if it's a PR thing or not, it sort of is tying back into that reputation narrative, both the album and the actual now, of her re-entering that a little bit mini Snake Kate era. But anyways, so what else did I want to say? So in this Capricorn chart, that's happening in the 11th house. And if it was a Scorpio rising chart, then that would also be happening in her first house. So it would be like people reflecting on herself and her public, the idea of Taylor and her physical vitality and all of that. That's what, in general, one of the other things I think about was, I feel like if she had a Scorpio rising, she would come across as like much more martial, because Mars is like right on the AC. And generally when people have Mars on the AC, like, they come across as like extremely bellicose and extremely like either like athletic, or like extremely like vitriolic, or extremely like obsessed with like war, or like, just like really like kind of can bring out a toxic masculinity vibe, which I don't see in her. Like, I think that the Scorpio is loud, and Mars is, is in Scorpio in her chart, which is its place of one of its houses and places of rulership where it's very comfortable. So she definitely has loud Scorpio, but I don't quite see it as her rising, because I feel like she is so obsessed with her legacy